The war between the species and the vast universe had entered its darkest phase, as the brutality of the Korum not only destroyed planets, but also shattered the long-standing principles of peaceful civilizations. On a distant planet, where these civilizations struggled to maintain peace, the roar of war echoed relentlessly. It was then that the attacks from the Korum forced proud races like the Lien and Orion to face their inevitable destruction. The scene inside the Galactic Council's meeting chamber was immense, filled with bright holographic screens, where delegates from various species were arguing in a dark space. Every word and gesture flashed like lightning in the air, reflecting the fear of civilizations gradually weakening. The Lien delegate, a delicate species covered in shimmering scales, was desperately trying to maintain order in the chamber. Ambassador Litra stood before the representatives, her eyes filled with concern but resolute. She raised her voice, calling for urgent action, a plea not only for the Lien people, but for all species on the brink of annihilation. But her words were met with derision from the Korum, a massive species with razor-sharp teeth like swords and wings that could slice the air. Their attacks were unpredictable and always instilled fear in their enemies. The Korum representative stood before the council, eyes full of contempt, his cruel smile evident. "You wish to fight us?" His laughter echoed. "Your weak strategies are nothing more than a joke against our power." That one line was enough to throw the entire chamber into chaos. Delegates from peaceful races now had no idea what to do. They had lost their faith in the old rules, in the very ideals of peace they had once fought to protect. The image of the council now appeared to be a dim, pressured room. Beneath the faint light from the holographic screens, the faces of the delegates looked tired, filled with anxiety. The shimmering lights from the screens reflected on the cold metal walls of the room. The sounds of the debate and the confused murmurs of smaller species seemed to fade away in the air like an inescapable nightmare. In this suffocating atmosphere, a strange voice suddenly rose from behind a darkened door where the human delegation had been silently waiting from the start. It was not the voice of a seasoned warrior, but that of a stranger, someone who carried an air of mystery. General Elias, the human representative, spoke in a deep, chilling voice that shattered the silence with his first words. "You cannot win by following the old rules. If you wish to survive, you must abandon everything that has made you weak." The appearance of humans in the meeting not only surprised the Korum delegates, but also everyone present in the room. Humans, with their strong strategies, had no regard for the established rules of the universe, but those very strategies could be the hope for the vast galaxy. The representatives of the Lien, Orion, and Valor exchanged worried glances, wondering whether the presence of humans would change the course of the war. In that quiet moment, all eyes were focused on General Elias, who had risen to change the fate of the galaxy. Humans, a species that had never participated in such negotiations, had now spoken up, and all they needed was a chance to show their strength. General Elias knew that now, the survival of all civilizations in the galaxy rested in their hands. In the heavy atmosphere, filled with tension, as the dim light from the holographic screens reflected on the faces of the representatives in the Galactic Council, the voice of General Vasir echoed like a strange sound in the room, completely separated from the noisy debate. His voice was cold, as if every word spoken carried the weight of a warning for the forces around him. The air seemed to grow unnaturally still, as if time itself had come to a halt. General Vasir, the representative of humanity, stood before the council, his eyes cold yet filled with unwavering determination. He was a middle-aged man, with slightly tanned skin, short black hair, and deep-set eyes that seemed to have witnessed too many tragedies. His attire was a simple dark gray combat suit, unassuming yet conveying strength and readiness for battle. Despite the lack of urgency in his movements, there was an underlying power in every word he spoke, commanding the attention of everyone present. His declaration was like a flame that flared up in the dark chamber of the council, causing all the representatives to pause, stunned into silence. No one could have predicted the humans' reaction in this situation, as they had always kept a significant distance from political disputes, avoiding the brutal wars between species. But today, humanity's silence had awakened a terrifying truth about war that no one in the council had ever imagined. General Vasir's voice did not tremble, nor was there any hesitation. He was not merely speaking to grab attention. Every word he uttered was like a summons, urging everyone who heard it to face the truth. "We must abandon the old rules," he continued. "If we want to survive, we must fight in our own way." His words struck like a revolutionary call, charting a new path that no one in the council had ever considered, a war that did not follow the peaceful principles, nor the rules the council had painstakingly built over centuries. His words landed on the delegates like sharp knives, exposing the weakness they had always held sacred. The Korum, the council's most unyielding enemy, were forced to falter, unable to continue their usual arrogant demeanor. Their sharp teeth, once symbols of invincibility, now seemed useless in the face of a species that had never participated in battles like this. The Korum, known for their brutal fighting style, were now rendered silent, as though the presence of humans signaled an inevitable change. The silence that enveloped the room was thick, like an impending storm about to break. The representative of Lian, Litra, who had persistently called for action from the beginning of the meeting, now stood still, feeling alien in the humans' declaration of war. She couldn't reject it, but neither could she fully accept it. The suffocating atmosphere made every breath feel heavy, as if she were struggling to breathe. The lights from the screens reflected on Vasir's face, creating a cold halo around him, symbolizing the coming battle. A great question hung in the air. Could humanity truly change the course of this war? Could they win not only with strength, but with this new, powerful approach? With just one sentence, General Vasir had caused everyone to pause and consider the path they were about to take. Humanity, with its unseen strategies, was no longer the weak force in the cosmic struggle. Was this the beginning of a new era, where exhausted civilizations would have to learn to fight in a completely new way? When General Vasir spoke, his words struck like lightning in the gloomy atmosphere, shattering the tense silence in the Galactic Council. His voice, deep and powerful, carried an extraordinary confidence, as if each word he uttered contained a steadfast resolve, unshakable and final. "Grant us command, humans. We understand the Korum better than anyone, and we know exactly how to end this war," he declared, his eyes gleaming with a cold light, like the dimming glow of a star slowly fading in the vastness of space. The room fell into silence, the tension rising to a palpable intensity, as if the very air had thickened and become suffocating. The delegates from the other civilizations in the council appeared stunned, unable to believe that humans, who were merely newcomers to the council, could make such a bold declaration of war. Humans, who had previously only participated in remote meetings, were now standing before these powerful forces, proclaiming they could end the war on their own terms. The silence lasted only a few seconds, but it was enough for every representative to feel the shift in the atmosphere. The Korum, the terrifying enemy that even ancient civilizations could not defeat, were no longer the only threat. The humans' determination forced everyone to reconsider, to ask themselves whether this was their last chance to save the civilizations on the brink of extinction. A great question hung in the air. Would the other species in the council agree to hand over command to the humans, or would they continue fighting in their old ways, only to be destroyed piece by piece? This was not only about accepting a new strategy, but also about challenging the pride and survival of ancient civilizations. Representatives from other species, creatures who once prided themselves on their power, could not help but feel anxious, even skeptical about humanity's capability. When had humanity gained the strength and strategy to face such a formidable foe like the Korum? These questions quickly spread through the room, but no answers came immediately. The silence from the other representatives was a reaction, a sign of disbelief. Were the humans truly ready? Were the strategies they spoke of just empty words, or did they truly have a solid plan? General Vasir was unwavering. His gaze remained as steady as the light of distant stars. He knew that this war was not just about one species. It was a war for the entire universe, for all those who still survived and had the will to fight. Humanity had to prove itself, had to step out of the shadows of uncertainty and stand firm amidst the devastating storms of war. This was not just a declaration of war. It was a call for sacrifice, a test of humanity's endurance in this fight for survival. The Korum were not just a violent threat, but also a nightmare of strategy. Their tactics had made every species in the Council tremble with fear. But humanity, with its unique intelligence and creativity, had found the cracks in the Korum strategy. And now, as all waited for a miracle, humanity's choice would determine the future of the entire universe. Could humanity truly win? Or would they merely be blind participants in a war, unaware of the consequences awaiting them? This question hung in the air, like a sharp blade hovering over the heads of all the Council delegates. When the strategic command was officially handed over to humanity, General Vasir stepped into his leadership role with unwavering resolve. However, no one anticipated that shortly after humanity began formulating plans to counter the Korum, a shocking discovery would leave every delegate in the Galactic Council utterly stunned. In a private meeting, a Korum representative, who had been captured and brought back for study, unexpectedly revealed a world-altering secret. The Korum were not just a powerful, brutal species. They also had a remarkably unique strategy to protect weaker civilizations. This revelation completely contradicted the Council's long-standing view of the Korum. They were not merely invaders. In a certain sense, the Korum had been protecting weaker civilizations, not by restoring peace, but by defending themselves from extinction. Zalek, a warrior from the Zyra species and one of the Council's representatives, overheard this revelation and was struck with a moment of deep reflection. For as long as he could remember, the Zyra had always regarded the Korum as the most vicious of enemies, expanding their empire through relentless destruction. Yet, the Korum's protection of weaker civilizations left Zalek bewildered. Could it be that even the most fearsome enemies might have noble intentions, at least when it came to protecting other species from annihilation? Zalek couldn't help but wonder. When humans take command of the strategy, can they maintain their morals and humanity in this all-out war? Can they confront the Korum with their own strategies without falling into the same brutal spiral of war as the Korum had done to countless civilizations? A great question lingered in Zalek's mind as he realized that in war, the line between good and evil is not always clear, and sometimes the very act of self-preservation can lead to destruction. Zalek found himself standing at a crossroads, where the choice before him would not only affect the outcome of the war, but also deeply impact humanity's moral foundation and the values of all the species within the Council. Could humanity uphold its humanity, or would they be pulled into the darker side of war when they faced the Korum and their brutal strategies? These questions not only troubled Zalek, but also began to shake the trust of other delegates in the Council, as they realized that war didn't always offer easy solutions. Sometimes, the enemies they had fought against carried profound lessons on survival and ethics in times of war. The moment of tension and horror had arrived. The Aether's Edge, humanity's mighty warship, stood ready for battle, now facing an alien force stronger not only in numbers, but also in sheer brutality. The warning systems blared, their shrill electronic signals cutting through the vacuum of space, indicating the unstoppable assault of the enemy drawing near. Zalek, a warrior of the Zyra species, along with the human fighters, felt the intense pressure. Everything was happening too fast, like a lightning-fast, overwhelming attack that could not be predicted. The once peaceful and progressive space was now being torn apart by relentless waves of assault. Plasma rounds and nuclear explosions painted bright streaks of light across the dark void of the universe, resembling meteors crashing into the heart of the ship. In that moment, Zalek's reason and instinct began to blur. He looked at the human soldiers, those comrades he had once doubted. But now, their lives hung in the balance, and he could see the fierce determination in their eyes. A life-or-death struggle was unfolding, not just for the survival of Aether's Edge, but for the very civilization they had built. The decision Zalek and the crew now faced was excruciating. Their ship could fight, but how strong was it really against an overwhelming force like this? With every passing second, Zalek realized he had to decide quickly. Should they sacrifice a significant portion of their team to protect the planet, or should they fight to the bitter end, clinging to the faint hope of saving the civilization they had worked so hard to build? They had learned much from Korum's tactics and strategies, and now it was time to apply what they had learned, not to destroy, but to protect what they called life. Zalek felt the painful weight of the decision, knowing that the survival of all humanity might hinge on this choice. Sacrifice was an unavoidable part of war. If they didn't make the right choice, the enemy would consume them all. Zalek watched the powerful energy blasts from the enemy's cannons, a cold shiver running down his spine as he realized that a single wrong move could erase everything. But then, he looked at the human comrades around him. Their eyes, filled with resilience, showed they were ready to sacrifice everything. A wave of emotion surged within Zalek. Every second counted. Every decision could mean life or death. Could he and the human fighters face the unimaginable? Could they come together perfectly to fight back against this invasion, even daring to make a brutal decision, knowing the cost might be too high? This choice would not only determine humanity's survival, but could alter the very balance of the universe. If they won, would it bring new hope to the oppressed civilizations, or would it merely be a warning of the cost of a peace that humanity had long forgotten? Zalek wondered in his fevered state. Could they survive this war without losing their fundamental values? Or would they have to pay the price by becoming reliant on ultimate power? This question echoed in Zalek's mind as he stood in the heart of this life-or-death battle, knowing that each decision could either lead to humanity's downfall or salvation.